Hey, Coach, we were just talking to the guys about improving three-point shooting, and Trevin said something about him just needing to shoot it. He said he's a very basket-minded guy. I'm just curious, is that something that you talked to him about? I mean, is there a balance? Because he was so effective around the rim, but obviously he's a guy who could help you from three.
Yeah, I mean, I think the game will obviously open up once we start, playing games in November. But right now, especially behind closed doors in practice, I think that it's physical. It's hard for guys to get feet set open threes with the way that we defend. And I think that in Europe, our competition was such that he was just so dominant around the rim that he really didn't take many threes. But I do think he's a guy that will take more than maybe what we've seen, to probably take more in a game than he actually does in practice. And certainly we feel like he's got the ability to be a guy that will knock down shots at a decent rate.
Along those same lines, Jordan Walsh was the guy that was mentioned who could probably help from three as well. Just curious what you've seen from him post-Europe to now in that regard, and then just overall with his progression.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan's, such a great athlete, and, he's tried to improve from his performance over in the 4 games overseas, and he's continued, like a lot of young guys, just continue to try to get better with each passing day.
Where do you think this team is better since you guys played your last game overseas?
Wow, good question. I think we've improved kind of understanding second and third options on our offensive sets. But we're still, we'll go over there today and we'll get into our defensive stuff, and some of the things that we talked about on day one we're still talking about today. Hand in the eyeball, no middle. I think that comes with having a really young team. I was just on the phone with Avery Johnson earlier today, and, he kind of asked about our guys and was asking about the age of them, and wow, I haven't seen a team that you've ever coached this young. So with 6 freshmen, even TB, I mean, you're talking about a player's, just in his sophomore year. So we have a young team. We have a lot of new guys. We find ourselves repeating ourselves a lot in practice. We're not moving ahead maybe at the rate that I want to because of having to repeat things. So we got to move those we got to move the chains every week a little bit further. We can't keep staying where we are. And with that, when something gets taught, we got to take it from the chalkboard to the practice to drills to live action. It can't just go from the chalkboard to drills, and then when we go live, we fall back into other habits. We gotta grow, and right now, we need to see quicker growth now that we're into this 20-hour segment than maybe what we've seen in a shortened 4-hour segment that we've been in per week.
Must it seem like your team got better defensively as the tour progressed, especially at the end, final game? What have you seen in terms of carryover when you guys got back, and have you been able to build on that where there's more confidence in defense?
Yeah, I think our defense for sure is probably ahead of our offense. It probably was overseas, Kevin. It probably still is today. But we still, like I said, got to have a little bit more patience with this group maybe than some other groups. I mean, it's, when you have, Jalen Tate out there, or you have Jimmy Witt, or, those guys, they were basically fifth-year guys. And so you tell them once or twice, and it gets implemented. Even, Justin Smith, with younger players and with a younger group and with a newer group, we're repeating ourselves a lot. more so than any team that I've ever coached. And so, like I said, with that comes a little bit of patience, and hopefully there'll be growth from, October to September to, we got to get a lot better than where we are.
As a follow-up to that, you guys, you've always had a philosophy of not doing a lot of live 5-on-5 full contact. Does that change at all? Is that the philosophy no matter what, or does it change if you have this many newcomers and some of the hurdles you talked about?
Yeah, I think what happens is you drill, then you go live, and if they lose that, whatever you want to say, execution, falling back into some habits that maybe we haven't taught, then you got to go back to the drills. And so I think it's up to the team how quickly you can get into live, and then is that live segment just an up and back? Is that live segment a segment where you can go 3 or 4 trips up and down the floor? That'll depend on our execution and how much we're following scheme on both sides of the ball. And then, quite frankly, it depends on health. We probably not have had up to this point as full of roster as we have in the past. So durability, even little things like, we've had more common cold, common, sniffles and little things. We've had more of that this year than I've ever had, and the weather hasn't changed. So I don't know how you get a cold when it's 70 degrees and most perfect weather in the world, but we've had that. So you got to be available too in order to move on with your team. You got to have available pieces and a full roster to be able to do that.
Bit of that too. It sucks.
Really? Have you been
yeah.
getting enough sleep, Scotty?
Not really.
I mean, nutrition, sleep pattern.
It all matters.
I mean, it all matters. You cannot blame it on the weather. I mean, cannot have that.
If I could, I'd like to take you.
You
back
taking
to-
નું vitamin C?
I don't take any vitamins. That's
a
I
problem.
think I have a Coke for breakfast every morning. If I could take you back to maybe your recruiting of AB. Do you remember what your first impression was of him, and now that you've got him here, what's it like to be around him and coach him on a daily basis?
I mean, he's an awesome young man. I think everybody in the program, the way that he respects everyone, the way that he treats everyone, he's got a great demeanor about himself. You can often sit back and watch how a player treats a graduate assistant coach, a trainer, a strength coach, an equipment manager, an assistant equipment manager, an assistant trainer. He's just got a great disposition about himself. I think that we as a coaching staff probably need to be even harder on him. I think sometimes he's so likable that he can get it's a little more problematic to get on him when he might need us to, based on he's just an easy guy to want to be around. But the whole recruiting process with him and his mom and Coach Peavy and his brother, I mean, it was about as easy recruiting. And when I say easy, not that it wasn't extremely competitive with other programs, but easy in the fact that it's really fun and easy to recruit someone that you enjoy being around, their inner circle and their family, and certainly we felt that way from the beginning dealing with Anthony and his family.
Trevin was in here earlier, and he likened Kamani to Dennis Rodman in terms of the way he plays and rebounds. Just what do you think of that comparison? Is that something you see?
Wow. I mean, Dennis Rodman was pretty good and pretty consistent. Who did that? TB compared him? Okay. It's a great compliment. I mean, I think that when you look at Kamani's numbers overseas and you look at his rebounding in practice, he's a incredible offensive rebounder. And I think the next progression for Kamani is to defensive rebound at the same rate he rebounds offensively, because he's got an incredible innate ability to go chase down offensive boards. And his offensive rebound rate is at an incredible high rate. Defensive rebounding is an area, like I said, that he can strive to become better as a defensive rebounder, become a well-rounded rebounder at both ends. But his free throws attempt per touch and his offensive rebound rate is at a really, really high level.
To learn a lot of patience, working with these younger players. Just how does your staff help with that, and how do they do with some of these young guys?
I mean, staff's great. Obviously, Keith Smart's probably one of the most patient men that I've ever been around, so he helps a lot. Gus has a great demeanor and kind of a California laid-back approach, so I think those two guys in particular, and then Coach Ruta's, as a younger guy, I think the only one that's not really patient is probably me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You have many virtues. I don't know if patience is one of them.
It's not one.
How are you handling having such a young team? Because you've been doing this a long time,
My wife reminds me walking out the door each day that at practice you're going to see some turnovers, and to become patient, and that the last few years of doing this that our teams have always gotten better, and to keep that in mind. And then, like I said, I think that we have a staff text thread that we're in, and Coach Smart does a good job of putting things in perspective. So.
During practice, you maybe want to unload on somebody. You're thinking, okay, count to 3 or something, and
I usually just go talk to Dave Rich, our strength coach. At that point, that's my outlet right now, is to go find out what those jackets they wear, how many miles we're putting, or I'll try to get my mind off of because the free throws or the 3-point percentage and the turnovers are problematic, and so is just the repeating of the same thing over and over. But we'll get better. We just got to keep repeating.
After Europe, a lot of that was probably the newness of the roster. Even older guys are new. How do you think you're going to progress with that, and who else do you see helping with the 3-point shoot, helping Nick with that?
Yeah, I think just overall from 3-point, it's got to be a group attack on that. Hopefully teams won't defend like we do, which will also help on the way that we shoot threes. Like if teams try to zone us, I think we'll actually be a better 3-point shooting team. I think, the way that we play man-to-man, as we saw in year one, we led the nation in defending the 3, and so those same concepts we have guarding our own 3-point. We don't play segments where we play a zone. So naturally when somebody plays a zone, I think we get our feet set more, and that's proven over time that sometimes we improve our percentage against a team that doesn't defend like we do. So hopefully that'll help as well. Was there a first part to that question?
I guess just, as time goes on, you just feel good, especially with the turnovers. As the guys get more used to playing with each other, the turnovers, that'll kind of solve itself,
I hope so, but I think the one thing that just younger players, whether you've only played 1 year in college or whether you've just played 2 years in college or whether you're coming from high school, valuing the ball and understanding how many close games and how each possession matters. That's something that we're learning now, and we have a lot of growth in that area. So we're trying to play a little bit more situational basketball, meaning we create a mojo moment and put up on the clock 13 seconds down 2. How are we going to react? And then we go live on that. Because we do have to, just as, probably every team in the country's got to get better at late situation basketball.
You've talked to us before about how important it is to get things on film and use it to coach them up. Have you already noticed any tangible benefits of that so far, and is it even more important this year with having all the young guys you've talked about?
Yeah, I think, like film work there's a lot of factors to that, Hutch. It's there's, you take how many guys are, because we put it all on a system called Huddle for them, and so one, they can log in themselves and watch it, which if you really care about your game, you're probably logging on to Huddle. The cool thing is, in our Huddle system, we know who logs in and who doesn't. And so there's got to be great growth in your own login to Huddle, to invest in your career, to watch your, how your game is being played. And then there's individual film with assistant coaches. And then there's, the film that we do as a group. So there's a bunch of different components to watching film. And, some guys are ahead of other guys watching film and investing in themselves. And some guys will text questions. Hey, this happened in practice. How do you want, and then there's other guys that there's no text exchange on it. So, but I think what they'll start finding out is the importance of film now that we're in this new segment of time, because in reality we really only had true film off the the 4 games overseas, and that gets a little old.
And you mentioned availability earlier. Is there anybody that's maybe limited or banged up or otherwise limited throughout as you begin practice?
Yeah, I think like right now, because we don't know when our first game is because Coach Ruta's still doing whatever. But whenever we're going to play sometime early November, we would assume. And so to talk about availability, injury, sickness is, to me, it's kind of us behind closed doors and not really, we have no significant injuries, so to speak of, Hutch. So it's, I'll just keep that to myself, I guess. When I have to give the injury report, we'll give it out in November.
Practice and you got more time, you got more hours. What's something that you want to focus in today on the first day of full practice?
A lot of the same stuff that we've been focusing on. I would say I don't know how the players, when they were in here, I don't know. I don't really feel any heightened awareness or anything because we've been practicing. It's now we're able to go longer but I don't really feel any difference, especially because we were in that 10 practices leading up to the European tour where we got some good time frame in, and we're still, that first game's still a ways away. So we just got to get better in all facets, not just one area.
You guys have been so good getting to the free throw line, not only attempts but conversion percentages in your seasons. But overseas, it seemed like the opposition had the edge there. Whereas you guys still attack the basket at a high percentage. What was that? Was it officiating? Is there something you guys are working on now? Looking back on that, it's a big part of your offensive production.
I don't think Commissioner Sankey can find me for talking about the officials overseas, but we're gonna have the game is officiated overall different. If you've from coaching Venezuela or Dominican national team, the whistle's just different. They don't protect dribble drive attacks of the rim like they do in college basketball. So I think innately, but we got to get better at, last year we were a great cutting team. We had 2 or 3 guys that were great cutters when they didn't have the ball in their hands. We had great dribble drive attack guys. So I think there's a whole bunch of things. I do think we'll be much better than we have been in the past, throwing the ball in the post and getting fouled. And now we just got to add the spacing to allow maybe a little bit more dribble drive attacks. I think when we played big, one of the areas to get better at is our big men in the dunker spots got to relocate out of dribble drive angles. And so that's been something that we've added maybe from the past. And if you get an offensive rebound, something the Spurs did really well with Ginobili is have a designated cutter off an offensive rebound. So that's something maybe that we're going to add, that element that we haven't done in the past. So, but we'll get better at drawing fouls, I hope.
I want to follow up real quick on something on offense. You probably have your best spoil of riches in terms of guys that can be primary handlers and set others up and maybe score. It seems that way. Have you kind of sorted out how you're going to figure that out minutes-wise and who's on the ball? And
I don't think so. I mean, if you look back at like rotations and stuff, Kevin, I think if you go, where was Trey Wade as far as his rotation, the responsibilities, where was he in November? And then where was he against Gonzaga? All right, you're guarding Chet. You got to make a three in the corner when they don't want to guard you. And Timmy's standing in the lane and you're 35 feet wide open. You got to make that shot. And we are going to run a play for you because we know Timmy wants to stand in the lane and not come out and guard you. So the importance of maybe where Trey Wade was against, Speedy Claxton's team in Little Rock, and then where he was in San Francisco against Gonzaga altered drastically. Even the year before, you look at maybe where Devo's role was and Jay Will's role their first 15 games as freshmen. Kind of bit minutes, but then they end up starting in the NCAA tournament, and Devo ends up hitting a humongous shot for us to advance. And their roles weren't like that. So I think that like where we are today, where we'll be in November, and I think it's our job as coaches to keep an open mind with guys that keep getting better and guys that have a feel for, hey, I got to get better in this aspect, and then they just keep getting better in November and December. So I don't ever want to be a coach that has something set rotation-wise. I want the players' performance to dictate minutes and roles.
Were overseas several times. You just spoke about how proud you were of Barry and just the way he was handling himself, not just on the floor, but I guess away from the floor too. Has he been that same guy since you guys got back, and you anticipate that maybe kind of continuing when practice starts?
Absolutely. Before I left for Dallas, and I was lucky enough to be able to get over there in a quick manner, Barry was shooting. Sunday, I walked in to print my articles on MLB managers and leadership and trying to learn. And when I went to go print, I heard a ball bounce. It was Barry. So as much as we all want to support all of our athletic programs when they're playing, Barry's in here working. And I only use this example because he's not going home. He's not hanging out. He's in the gym. And he's grown as much as anybody in this program. Where that leads role-wise or whatever, but from a culture standpoint, he's at the top of the list right now for coming in the morning. He doesn't come in at 10 in the morning. He's in here at 7. And so his will to do the right thing, his will and his focus to get better, probably can't have any more focus and desire, and then following through with thoughts on how to get better. He's been awesome. Yep, thanks you guys.